Hello, and welcome to the second webinar in the Strategic Content Marketing Series, Get Your B2B Buyer Journeys on the Right Track. My name is Suzanne Martin, and I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at the MX Group. I've been a B2B marketer for my entire career and have worked at both Motorola as well as 3 startups, and currently I lead marketing at the MX Group, which is an Ad Age Top 50 demand gen and digital agency. Today we're going to talk about the content challenge that all marketers have and an aspect of solving that, which is the buyer's journey and really mapping out the buyer's journey. There are 2 companion webinars in this series. One is on personas and the other is on content mapping. These 3 things together, we believe, are the strategic foundation for effective content marketing. So today we'll talk about, in this webinar, buyer journeys, and I'll give you more information on the other 2 webinars at the end. So what is content marketing really? So content marketing is something that marketers have been dealing with and probably think we've been doing our entire career. We take content, we engage, we're obviously trying to grow our companies and use all the tools at marketing's disposal to get that done. But there's something different that's happened with the formation of the digital foundation upon which we all rest, the buyers and the sellers, and it's changing how marketers are pulling together effective programs. And so there's this term that's come out of that called content marketing. And what's it really about in a nutshell? It's really making sure that you're distributing valuable and relevant content. It's not about tonnage of content, it's about the right content. And also making sure that you're attracting and retaining a clearly defined audience. It's not about you, it's about them and your prospects and what they need. And it's designed to engage those customers, those prospects at every stage of the journey. And it is an evergreen strategy, and unlike probably marketing more traditional sense of stop-start campaigns, this is about more of an inbound strategy where you're trying to make sure you're providing content and value to buyers in whatever need state they're at, whether it's in the evaluation, the selection, or the education phases of the buyer's journey, that you've got something for them. And together, done well, this is a great way to look at content marketing. But there are challenges with that today, and many marketers feel like they just don't have a strong handle on it, as much as we're producing more and more content. 57% of marketers actually think they don't have enough time to devote to content marketing because they're just so busy, probably frankly, producing content. And yet, at the same time, over half also are struggling to create what they would believe to be engaging content, and content that's making a difference. And it's important to companies to get this right, because over almost $1 billion is being wasted in the US today to get this done. Now, lots of things sound like solutions. You've been told, do more inbound. But wait, no, just make sure the outbound's better. Use real-time personalization in your technology, in your marketing automation system. That'll make the difference. Or go omni-channel. Make sure you're covering all device platforms and all marketing media at all times. Leveraging account-based marketing, that's really hot right now, as well as tapping into predictive analytics. And all that is true. All those things can help. But it seems like the more and more solutions that are out there, the more complicated this game gets. But really, in the end, there really are 3 simple answers to that content challenge. And they are strategic in nature and yet very practical. One is understanding the buyer, truly understanding what drives and motivates them. The second is knowing the journey that they're on. And the third is identifying what content matters most to number 1 during number 2. Today, again, we're going to be talking about the buyer's journey and focusing on how to kind of really effectively outline what that is. Okay? So in this webinar, what we're going to do is cover why understanding the buyer's journey is so important, how to define buyer needs, which is really at the crux of making sure that the journey is effectively designed. So I'll spend a good bit of time on that. Why buyers should be in control of their own journeys, and how to start off on the right track. So let's start with a common definition of buyer journeys. Now, the buyer journey is a buyer's process, and I know that sounds a little obvious, but it really, really, truly is about them, and you've got to start there. Marketing and sales have traditionally, as much as we talk about being very market driven, our operational frame has been very inside out. Let's talk about us. It's a sales journey. It's a sales pipeline. it's upper funnel, middle funnel, lower funnel. It's about us. And really, you have to really think about it as the buyer's journey, because they are the ones who are going through the need state and the need to solve it. And it's really, the more you become very in tune with how they're going through their process, the better you're going to be able to provide them with the solution that they're looking for. And journeys are so important because the buyer is in control today more than at any other time. You've heard this metric, I'm sure, a few times around the marketing water cooler, and it's true. Over half of the purchase decision is complete before they even give you a call. And you're lucky if they saw something from you that got them to pick up the phone and call you or send you an email. And over 2/3 of the process now is also done digitally. So making sure that and this doesn't just mean having, digital assets. This means engaging people in a digital format and digital way when you might not even know that they're looking yet. So it is something that really gives a marketer pause today, to make sure that, we're doing this right. And that's why journeys are a big buzzword right now for marketers to figure out. Because the framework of the journey at the highest level is actually pretty easy to understand, right? It's education, solution, selection. Serious Decisions map this out. It's probably, I love them dearly, but no great huge insight, right, that this is the framework. But it's so important to think about what this means, how it actually gets done today. And so it is important to break this down to the simplest view of the purchase journey so that we can then move on and build something around it. So these are very simple words, but it's a very powerful framework because it's about the buyer and not about you. And that is the hard part, shifting your thinking from sales cycle to buy cycle. And the other hard part is getting true insight on what people want and what they need in that buy cycle. So personas are really important as a prerequisite before building out your buyer journey. And again, we've got a separate webinar on that, which just takes a few minutes to go through, and it is an important exercise to go through. So definitely consider that. And you also need to ensure that the content and the marketing experiences really enable the journey and keep people advancing through it. Now, I won't be talking much about technology as a part of this discussion today, but it does, is this something I did want to point out right now, as you're thinking about the journey. Do you have a well-designed database for your outbound marketing efforts? Do your inbound lead drivers, do you have them in place? Do you have things like retargeting working for you? Do you have conversion paths set up on your website? And are you using marketing automation not just for batch and blast, but truly as trigger-based automated content, so that as people, no matter where they're at on their journey, are coming to you, you're providing them with the value that they're seeking. So that probably in and of itself, that little green box right there, is a whole other presentation that we'll get to. But for now, just keep this in mind, that under the foundation of the buyer's journey is a technology enabler out there that you will need to work on. And it can get even harder. I mean, if you don't want to look at these little, the small font in this image, if you really, really start mapping it out, and putting, the database connects here to this piece of content, et cetera. I mean, this is a typical, well-documented journey for a particular persona in a particular need state. But again, let's step back from the complexity of all that and say, what is your mission really? Because in the end, it's pretty simple. It's for you to develop and deliver content that resolves buyer questions as they seek to meet a need at every stage of their purchase journey. That's really what it's about, questions, answering questions. And your content needs to answer those questions at the right time in the right place. And what that means to you, and good news in this, is that you're not talking about needing a ton of content, but it is the right content. So if you map this journey out, your final exercise then is to map content to it. And you'll find it's less than you think you need. So back to content marketing and how that relates to the buyer's journey. One-size-fits-all marketing programs just aren't working anymore. And that's because the buyer does expect personalized information. They can get it, and they'll go where they can get it. And if you don't provide it, they'll get it from someone else. The programs really do need to be targeted, highly personalized, and multi-channel. And the best programs will support every stage of that journey to continue enabling the buyer to move to the next phase of their own spot in that journey from education, evaluation, and selection. Leveraging tech well depends on a well-defined journey as well. So for those of you that have tried the buyer's journey process before and are struggling with getting your technology really working well, you've got to lock those two together and really align them. And you need a really well-defined journey to get that tech set up and used the way it's intended. And as I mentioned earlier, content marketing is not necessarily campaign marketing in the traditional sense. It's not about stop-start marketing. And that's because you want to be able to attract and be there all along the journey on whatever the topics are that are of relevance and answering those questions to the buyers, because that's what they want when they want it, not when you want to give it to them. So I'm going to spend some time talking about the need state because, again, when people go out looking for something, they're not looking for a product. They're not looking for you. They're not even looking for the product. They may just be looking to identify what their problem is first or their challenge, let alone how to solve it. And so one way to look at this, and I think Serious Decisions does a great job of framing this in a very simple and powerful way, is to say that a need is a desired outcome. And obviously in the business sense, it has a value, a business value for a persona. And I would add here, even though it's not written in by Serious Decisions, but that persona has dollars to spend. And so you're looking at them in the need state that they're at. They're looking for a desired outcome, and they're willing to spend money to get that desired outcome. So you want to be there, obviously, when they're willing to do that. So if you really have a good insight into their need state, then you can build your journey around that. So here's an example. There is a good way and a not so good way to go about defining this. And in this particular example, again, starting from the inside out perspective, you would say, well, this HR team needs recruiting software. They need my recruiting software, but they don't need your software. What they need is to hire the best talent to give their organization a competitive edge. So what does that mean? That they're coming at it from an outcome with business value. Okay, and you want to make sure that when you're defining the need, you do the same thing. You don't want to look at it as they need my product, they need my software. And a way to kind of break out of that bad habit that we might have as marketers is to take the next step of defining the needs, which is to break it down into 3 levels. Organizational need is a requirement to solve a problem that's at the organization or the industry level. There's a functional need, perhaps. So in the prior example, HR as a function may need something to help operate better. And individually, the person who is the decision maker may have a certain contextual requirement based on their job role. So if I go back into that example again and we look at the 3 dimensions of need, we look at the persona and we say, well, they have a need for a desired outcome that has business value at the organizational level. It's hiring the best talent. At the functional level in the HR department, they need to fill positions quickly. And the individual need of the HR leader is to build a reputation, a personal brand or equity as a career maker. So now you know what they're looking for. And again, your product may solve every one of those needs, but you need to not start talking in that language. You need to start making sure that you're tying into the need state. When they are starting to go out and understand the problem that they've got and start evaluating solutions, don't fall into the trap that if they're consuming a lot of content, that means that they're ready to buy. It's actually the opposite. In the beginning of the journey, they're consuming a lot of content because they're getting educated. They're comparing alternatives. They're looking at different ways to solve their problem. And as they start to hone in more on what those solutions are, they actually are consuming less content, which again seems counterintuitive. So we always think as marketers, oh, they're consuming a lot of content. I'm going to score this lead really high and I'm going to throw it over to sales. It may not be ready yet. They might be literally in the early stages of the education process, which means it's not a good time to get into sales because sales doesn't want to be bothered with someone that's not ready to talk yet. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about digital fit and how you can use digital assets and tools to help the buyer get themselves ready for the sales team. Because this is one of the things that just seems counterintuitive, but it turns out to be true. And the CEB shares this view that the more content they consume does not necessarily mean that they're ready to buy. And additionally, Content consumption does not necessarily mean preference. If you look at the winner in any given supply bake-off here, and you look at the two runners-up, the level of content consumption wasn't much different. And that's an interesting thing to look at, because you think, oh, well, they must really like my content, therefore they prefer me. Not necessarily. So to become the buyer's top choice, you really do need to let them control their own journey. When sales takes the lead, and traditionally, again, marketing and sales have worked together, and marketing's like, let me get that lead to sales as fast as possible. It's been a speed game. Let's get it to sales. And oh, by the way, they're consuming a lot of content. They must be active and they must be ready. I'm going to send them over there. And the sales team finds that the prospect went from curious to reluctant because they weren't quite ready to talk to sales yet. And it's one of the reasons why today people are hesitant to download an ebook, perhaps, or a white paper, because, and you've probably had this happen to yourself as a marketer, the minute you do that, you're going to get a phone call, or you're going to start getting bombarded with emails, and you may not be ready. And sales team ends up, doing a lot of work to work that, that lead, to get them to the friendly phase, to get them to collaborative phase, and you actually lose a lot of people along the way. Digital fit is a different framework for thinking about that. If you provide tools and content in a manner and in a fashion that enables the buyer to drive their own journey, that when they do provide you with the right level of information to reach out to them, you find that these people are more enthusiastic and more hopeful and want to talk to sales. So it actually pushes the connection to the sales team further down the cycle, the buyer's journey, but at the same time, they are more amenable to talk to the sales team. They convert at a higher rate, and in the end, the process, interestingly, actually takes less time. So if you kind of compare the gray traditional model with the purple digital fit or digital driven model, you'll see that sales activation is pushed further down, and yet you still pull in the whole process in the end. And there are types of content that can help you with this, which I'll share later. So again, a buyer-centric purchase journey. This might be a little tough to read, but I'm going to walk you through it. Hopefully this will make sense. The customer buying journey, the CEB put this together, and this is a very similar model to the Serious Decisions model. Again, it's understanding the problem, evaluating solutions, determining the criteria for selection, and then selecting the supplier. Along the way, the customer has questions, and I've said this before. If you can just answer those questions and answer them well and answer them better than your competition, you will win. Because there's supporting content types that will enable the buyer to move to the next phase in their journey. And by consuming that content and getting their questions answered, they can move to the next phase that has more questions to be answered, but they're moving. And sometimes appropriate content can even indicate readiness for sales. Let's say they download sample RFPs. I mean, that would be a really good indicator that they're probably at a different phase of readiness for talking to the sales team. And there's also content that can help resolve buyer questions and progress the customer closer to purchase, like ROI calculators. And there's interactive tools like this, which I'm going to share with you on the journey. So again, it's really zoning in on what those questions are that need answers. So how do you get started with this? Well, you have to organize yourself around those personas and align the buy cycle insights. You start with where you touch the market. So across the core elements of your marketing mix, you make sure you're answering those questions that the prospects have. And do think differently about touch points in the upper, middle, and lower funnel. So, and I'll get a little more into that detail in the final webinar, which is on content mapping. But in general, an upper funnel conversation touch point is an offer of information or help, right? And it just makes sense because it has a lower level of data capture or commitment from the buyer, which means that they give you less information to get that level of information. And down in the lower funnel, they provide more, but they're also willing to give you more at that point because they're like, yeah, maybe I want to talk to you now. And then that's where you want to really get them connected to sales. And how do you know you're on track? If you've set up your buyer's journey, you've got the content mapped properly, how do you know that it's working? Well, engagement should be showing up as an increase in your metrics. You should start to see engagement metrics going up. Your overall number of conversions may also increase. MQL to SQL ratio increase. Basically that means that less drop off, between marketing and sales. What's going into sales is higher quality. And there may be less that go into sales, but they're higher quality. So that's why I say it's not necessarily that your overall number of conversions may increase, but just that the conversions that do happen are higher quality. It should reduce the length of your purchase cycle because, again, you're bringing them in maybe a little bit later, but they're quicker to close. And just a little question for yourself as you're thinking about this, do you have the tools in place to measure marketing throughout the funnel? Because you're going to want to see and take a look at all this as it's going along to measure your impact. So what's next? What you really want to do next is to view the webinar on buyer personas because you need to have those in place in order to set up the journey. And also there's a webinar that follows this one on content mapping, which will help you kind of pull it all together. And we're here to help you with any guidance. Just send us an email to webinars@themxgroup.com with your questions, and we will be sure to help you. So thank you so much for listening today, and let's continue the conversation. There's a variety of ways to engage with us at whatever level you wish. You can go explore our ebooks on mxgroup.com, themxgroup.com. You can take a modern marketing assessment, which is an interactive tool that does also give you a good example of interactive tools, which I do share in the final webinar. And also you can follow our blog. You can easily subscribe, and we send out the blog digest once a month. So thank you very much for your time, and I hope we can help you.